welcome to the Soul of the Everyman on the Artist First Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Find them at artistfirst.com. Please send your questions and comments to dj@artistfirst.com. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here they are, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
And thank you very much, Z-Man, and I am Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
And do we sound silkier tonight?
I think it's clearer.
I think we sound zoomier.
Mm.
We could be sounding zoomier for all you ships at sea, but we're just grateful.
Yes.
We're grateful for technology.
We're just grateful to be alive.
We're grateful to be alive. You know, that's a great place to kick this off, is that I think far too few people are literally just grateful to be alive.
Well, it's usually because they haven't been through an experience where you may not be alive. That was never a possibility.
Right, never, where you suddenly realize that you cannot take that for granted.
Right. Well, to be exposed to that, it's a whole paradigm shift when death becomes a reality in your life.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing is, though, that you often will answer somebody who says, "How are you doing?" He says, "I'm breathing."
Yes, I have said that.
And, well, you say it quite often, and I think that sometimes people are taken a little bit aback by that. I say, "What do you mean you're breathing? Don't you, that's like a given." But it's, well, from experience, it's not a given. And the corollary, I can barely say that, it almost snapped my tongue off. The corollary of that is that you're grateful that you are breathing, that you woke up on the right side of the grass this morning, that your eyes opened up and you saw daylight and not, dirt.
Well, actually, what's been interesting is if I give that as a response, I'm breathing, I've had quite a few people turn to me and grin and say, "Yeah, any day above ground is great."
Well, but that's the sort of the right response, in my opinion.
Yes, but what I'm saying is because normally they looked at you like, "What are you talking about?"
Exactly.
And then they sort of get this interesting quirk on their face, and you wind up, I just remember looking at them going, "Well, have you ever been through a period where you couldn't breathe?" And they think about, "Oh, yeah. Yeah."
Well, I mean, I think I would go back to when you say that to somebody, I think the reason that they're put off a little bit sometimes, and you can continue the way you just did, which is say, "Have you ever, kind of put it in context?" But I think they're taken aback a little bit because what you're basically doing is making them just the tiniest bit uncomfortable. You're taking a casual, really an unconscious sort of "how you doing?" because, although people say it all the time, they don't really care, and they really don't want to know.
Usually, yeah.
So when people say "how you doing?" "Oh, fine." It's unconscious babble chatter. It's nothing more than blather. And so the unconscious sort of pseudo-polite blather that people, shove back and forth over the water cooler or whatever, all of a sudden is sort of incised and sort of cut apart with a real answer. Okay, and the real answer is "I'm breathing."
Mm-hmm.
And I know the way you say this. I'll just say this very, very carefully. That you say it, and you look right into people's eyes when you say it. You try to catch them into a real moment, a moment of connection, because most of this, babble blather is nothing about connection at all. It's all about just mouthing the words, being unconscious, pretending to care because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to say, "Oh, how are you doing?" "Oh, good. And oftentimes what people are really doing is sort of checking the box, blop, 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 and then go, or say a couple of sort of pseudo-introductory, but not really, well-meant remarks, so that they can then say what they want to say. You know what I mean? It's
Well,
it's really a negotiation of, now I want to tell you all about my troubles. You know, how you doing? Good. Oh, let me tell you about my day. Rah, 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 rah. You know.
Well, just trying to bring it a step deeper than just the
well, that's what you're doing.
Surface. Yeah, because honestly, I only have so much breath in my body. I don't want to spend it on. I
don't want to waste my breath on you.
Well, just superficial conversation that you can. Or if they really are just in that mode, all you have to do is make a noise, and it doesn't matter.
Right, exactly so. And remember the casual conversation, casual conversations, How They Bore Me, that song by Supertramp?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a wonderful sort of, the whole song was in fact a litany of how unconscious and how insincere and phony society was. That was sort of the theme of that song. And it was the same sort of, in one sense, the same sort of thing, trying to wake people up a little bit and get them to be grateful for the moment of now. I mean, it's not said in so many words, but when you say, I'm breathing, it means right now.
Right.
I'm breathing, and I'm not taking it for granted. And, I mean, Tolle would say, and many others probably, some of the meditative practices would say, that concentrating on the breath is a way to become mindful.
Yes. Yes, it is. In fact, I was reading something where the meditative breath that we had been doing before, the slow breath in and the slower breath out, and just running the energies through the body that way. What it actually does is it stimulates the vagus nerve, which I thought was fascinating because...
You should expound a little bit about the vagus nerve.
All right. You want to give a definition of what the vagus nerve is, because I know you love doing that.
No, I thought you were going to. I mean, I think it's important to understand what you mean by that what it does, what the vagus nerve does.
Well, define it, and then I'll tell you what the breath does.
It's one of the cranial nerves. It's cranial nerve 10, and it is the longest nerve in the human body. It connects everything. Almost all of your autonomous nervous systems are connected via the vagus nerve, but it's not part of the autonomous system directly. It's really the primitive pre-spine connection between the viscera, which is the gut, the heart, the lungs, the kidneys. Every part of the body uses the vagus nerve to connect directly to the brain. So there's not a lot of all this spinal, all this vertebral stuff, all this fancy dancy vertebrate stuff. Now this is direct to drive. The vagus nerve is like reality.
It interconnects the entire body outside of your spinal cord.
Mm-hmm.
And it does connect up to the brain. And what they discovered is when you engage in breath like that, you are actually engaging the stimulation of that vagus nerve. And what it actually does is almost like a reset for the body. It begins to coordinate all the impulses through that vagus nerve system. And it calms the body. That's why this has always been used to de-stress people and get to a point where they're not focused only on what they're thinking about or upset about. The vagus nerve is actually balancing the interconnections, the systems, and you calm down.
Mm-hmm. It is. You can directly stimulate the vagus nerve in a number of different ways. The breath is one, but you can also use massage. Certain energy points on the body. I'm sure some of the healing points are actually hitting directly upon the vagus nerve.
Right.
And you are absolutely right in the sense when you stimulate the vagus nerve. One of the first aid techniques to interrupt a tachycardia, which is where your heart is racing,
right,
is to stimulate the vagus nerve, because in stimulating the vagus nerve, it sends a signal directly to the heart and calms its beats down and puts it into a more natural sinus rhythm. Similarly, as you mentioned with babies, when they're all upset, if you rub gently upon the little contact points of the vagus nerve, the side of the neck, right behind the ear is a good one, it calms them down. It is a soothing, synchronizing kind of influence, direct sort of neural influence, and it also goes both ways. The whole idea of thinking with your gut, of being able to connect up with the neural network, which is part of your mesentery, part of your digestion and intestines, your actual thinking with your gut, and the serotonin-producing cells that are down there is all via the vagus nerve as well. Mm-hmm. So there's a tremendous physiological analog of that meditative state that travels along this pathway.
Well, it's allowing a balance to come back in, because your previous discussions we've had, where stress, it doesn't matter if you're actually physically going through it or imagining you're going through it, the body's still reacting to the stress and releasing all kinds of corticosteroids. When you can disengage from that, you can begin to bring that whole level down, de-stressing. Mm-hmm. And doing that kind of breath work or meditation, visualization work. To really, what you're doing in that moment is you're not thinking about what your quote-unquote problem is. Where you're stressing. That's where you're stressing, is when you're looking at your problem.
Well, and rolling it through your mind, if you will, instead of through, yes, I'm sorry.
And allowing the processing to begin to disengage. In other words, you are no longer looking solely in this one defined box. You expand your focus, you pull away from the problem, and you allow space. And this is where the breath comes in, is in this spaciousness. So engaging in that, frankly, it should really be taught to all people on how to turn off the stress level.
Well, it's that stress cycle, right? The sort of the
to interrupt it.
Interrupt the stress cycle, exactly, because it is a positive. If you've ever run into a problem where you have a positive feedback loop, it means that the stress engenders more stress. So I'm stressed about being stressed, and that as you can see, would tend to build upon itself until you are through the moon stressed, or you literally are in sort of a inflammatory stress is another thing that is positive feedback. So you get an inflammation in a joint, it hurts, it sends more inflammatory chemicals into your system, and increases the inflammation, and so it becomes a runaway sort of thing.
So I'm grateful.
Oh, you're coming back to the topic. Good.
I'm grateful that this is a technique and an option that is available. And you can actually choose to, no, I do not want to enter into stress. I'm going to go a different way.
So you're perfectly timed in reminding us that we have another topic, that is not the vagus nerve.
It was it was applicable.
It is definitely applicable.
But this is not the topic.
So let's refocus ourselves on gratitude. And we have a great quote. We could put that in here if you wish.
Sure.
But I just wanted to frame it a little bit. We are coming into the latter half of the year, And in North America, or in America rather, we have the celebration of Thanksgiving. And when you say that, a lot of people are very stressed about Thanksgiving. They're not in the mode of being grateful. They're both mostly in the mode of being of thinking about it and I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to invite this one and that one, and go through all this sort of stress cycle.
I think a lot of it has to do with broken relationships.
Well, that's true.
No, seriously, because frankly, the preparation for Thanksgiving almost becomes a therapy for them. Let me just focus in on this. I got to get how many people fed. But thinking about who actually is coming, who can come, who can't come, I think that is more stressful than necessarily going to get your free turkey at your supermarket.
Well, and to kind of latch back into last week or the addiction episode that we had, the holidays also brings up stress, which then drives people towards, trying to alleviate that stress, and sometimes into recidivism if they've been at any time in their life addicted to something. But I think this particular sentiment, this idea of gratitude, can break all of those various stress cycles as well. When you answer the question, somebody says to you, "How are you doing?" The immediate answer can be, "Oh, I'm completely overwhelmed. There's 5,000 people coming to my house for Thanksgiving. This one can come, this one can't come. I got to do this, I got to do that, da 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 da." And instead, if you did what you said, which is say, "I'm breathing," and the implication is I'm grateful for just being alive. I'm grateful for the moment of now. It breaks that stress cycle, and that idea of practicing gratitude at any time of year, or any time of
any moment of
the day. But right now is a good time to remind yourself, because it is the idea of Thanksgiving is to be grateful, to give thanks is another way of saying gratitude. I thank you for what I have right now.
Right. Well, it's again, that's where the contrasts come in, and the regret of what you don't have. Mm-hmm. So where is the focus? Is it only on the regret, or is it truly, I have something to be grateful for or grateful with, even though I've made mistakes? And it's progress. It's not perfection. It's progress. And the ability to accept the progress, because there are these markers in somebody's mind that our relationship should look like this. Mm-hmm. If it's working, if it's a good relationship, then it should have this and this and this and this in it. And mistakes happen. And yeah, maybe you are responsible for the mistake. But the honesty in admitting that it was a mistake is usually the first step in being able to be grateful for what you actually have, and grateful for the moment where there was a relationship. Good or bad doesn't mean anything. You're actually there and alive to experience life and all its mountains and valleys that go with it on your pathway.
There's a lot there, but that's exactly right. A relationship has those mountains and valleys too, which is basically what you were saying is that the gratitude for the moment of now isn't a judgment on the moment of now, because the judgment is all about whether it's good or bad,
yes,
whether it's a valley or a mountain, for me, and and you just said it, whether you've hit all the markers, like, well, if my relationship only had A, B, and C, or if I only had A, B, or C, or if only this was better, that. So all those sentiments the check boxes or the if onlys or the the regrets about mistakes or the unacknowledged responsibility, whatever those are all taking you away from, pushing gratitude right out the window, taking you away from the moment of now. Because gratitude isn't a judgment. People say, well, what are you grateful for? Nothing good is happening. Well, if you remember the silly Christmas movie, The Grinch That Stole Christmas, when they had nothing at the end of this wonderful little children's story, they were still grateful. And who couldn't understand that? The horrible, nasty, evil Grinch, because he's like, well, if they take everything away, how can they be grateful? Yet, gratitude doesn't require things to be perfect, as you just said.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't require A, B, and C to be 1, 2, and 3, that you have this much and that much and this thing and that thing. None of that. Gratitude is just in the moment of now for being here and alive and able to experience it. And experience is another non-judgmental word. It doesn't mean it's good or bad. You're just being there.
Mm-hmm. And it's a being state. It's not a...
Right, gratitude is a being state.
Right, it's not a doing state.
Right, nor is it an egoic state.
Right.
People say, well, how can you be grateful? Everything is horrible. But be grateful anyway.
Oh, please.
Because it's going to change, and B, this is where you are right now. Gratitude also is part of acceptance about this is the moment of now, and thank you, and I'm grateful that I'm still here to experience it.
It's always interesting when you're wherever you happen to be out in the public, and many times you wind up getting snippets of conversation.
Oh my God. Yes, you do.
Inevitably, it's complaining.
Almost always.
If it's not one thing, it's another. The aisles are too narrow.
Yeah.
You're just like, well,
I'm too fat is what you mean.
Or, it's almost as if the art of conversation has fallen off a cliff. And the only conversation that's permissible is sharing complaints. So, you just...
that's another thing about you.
What?
Well, I mean, you have conversations with people all the time. And I think that one of the icebreakers or one of the beginnings of having a real conversation is that phrase that you use. Because in the store, especially if you're dealing with somebody who's, a little bit busy, maybe they're working in the store or whatever, and they just say, how you doing? And that, that completely non-committal, socially polite, I really don't care, just goes in one ear and out the other every 5 minutes. But then when somebody says, I'm breathing, all of a sudden, if you get past that little social nothing and then it's not the moment now, and you bring them into the moment now, suddenly you'll have you particularly will have conversations with people, and then I'll hear about them later. And they're wonderful little vignettes. You'll say, well, I had this wonderful little experience with this person who, I don't know, you start the conversation and you hear all about their life. Yeah. Or what, and then at the end there's a true, okay, it was a being moment. There was a true exchange. You probably don't know each other's name, and although they'll probably recognize you 6 months from now, you might say, well, I don't remember that person. But that underlying all of that is that moment of now gratitude, because you broke through this sort of shell of indifferent sort of social gabble nonsense noises with this I'm breathing, and they're like, well, wait a minute. And then you shake them out a little bit, and then some people run away and they don't want to hear about it, and they just but I think from what you tell me, more often than I don't do any of this. I don't talk to people. People are terrible. But Margaret talks to people. Can you imagine? And has wonderful, real conversations. And I'll hear about it later. And they're very interesting, almost always very interesting little vignettes about this perfect stranger that was trying on this, and you helped her, and you gave her the. Well, I mean, there's a million of them. I'm just recalling the last 7 or so.
Yeah, no, well, it's understanding that people are suffering,
and that was a cute little story.
Yeah.
Of the little lady who was she trying on something, and you told her how lovely it looked, and then she said, "I'm going to buy it," or I don't know. You gave me this whole story, but it was not the "Hi, how you doing? Good, good, good." Gone.
It was one of those moments where, if you're wherever you happen to be, you understand that the human heart is trying to function. And there's a lot of people who are suffering from different things. And the person that you're thinking of was suffering from loss. And she had been looking at something and decided to try on a coat. And we both happened to be there. And I was just looking at the material this coat was made out of. It's one of those. So she tried it on, and I looked at her and said, "Oh, that's a lovely pattern on you." And it was. She was absolutely suited to it. And it opened the door to a conversation where she was doing this because she was visiting and was lonely because she's missing someone she loves dearly.
Right.
So we just had this simple interaction of, well, maybe that would the size down from that fit you a little bit better. So suddenly, there's someone who cares about how I look.
Mm-hmm.
Even though,
wants to share that.
Yeah.
And sharing that moment is a human energy exchange.
Right. And people in general, anyone you meet, you can approach in that particular way. If you look at them through eyes of, you may be suffering something great, and their eyes can tell you if they are. That's the truth of it. There's a certain deep pain that you can recognize when you've been through stuff. There's a gentleness in the manner, and a sadness, but a query in the eyes. Like, okay, what's going on here? And when you're able to meet them on that level, it's like, oh, I understand. And you allow the space, and you just making a very simple statement, but you are so present because you realize that person has been hurting and is functioning and doing their best to be socially interactive without being obnoxious. Mm-hmm. Because there are people that I've met that are hurting, and what they do is lash out.
Yeah.
They're not acknowledging that the other person that's next to them might actually be hurting as well. They're the only one that's hurting, and they're the only one that matters.
Well, and that, I would say that's egoic and pain body, but yes.
Yeah, but you can see it unfold in front of you if you're willing to abide in the gratitude of being alive. It allows for you to see that shadow or that darkness that person may be engulfed in, carrying, but trying to function. And you as the other person, you are mirroring this other person. You can mirror the gratitude back in terms of, I'm so glad you're here. Simple. But people understand when you really are grateful for their presence.
Exactly. So, this is exactly the point. Gratitude opens that pathway. You said it also. You said you look at them and you give a real response. So there's an opening and there's a space, and then there's a presence and a gratitude for the other's presence, and that's the welcoming portion of the beginning of that interaction. You're opening yourself to having a little, and then so there's a bit of trust that's required from the other. They have to think, well, this looks like I can actually have an interaction, and I am. At a basic level, you see that somebody has something they want to unburden or to interchange or to express. In this case, it was a loss, a sadness, but they're not destroyed by it. They're not overwrought by it. But it's there. It's a human connection, a sharing of this suffering, this pain, and that gratitude opens that, and then it strengthens it a little. It gives them some sort of bridge to walk upon, saying, I'm here for you. I am grateful to you. I'm a human being. I recognize that you have something within you that it requires, a little space, a little presence, a little grace. Gratitude is also a very close cousin to grace. You give them the grace, the gratitude. It opens the pathway. It softens the path. And it relieves suffering. Now, when you guys were done having this little exchange, both of you went your separate ways. But there was a healing, or certainly at least an exchange which lessened the burden. So you're able to not take what they're suffering from them, but just witness it, acknowledge it, give it reduce the loneliness of it. As she said, she was a bit lonely.
Yeah.
And feeling, well, everyone else is just,
everybody else must be doing fine.
Right. And
that's the attitude we all have.
Right. And of course that's the ego talking. No one is suffering as much as me. And everyone else is having a wonderful, blessed life that everything that they have is wonderfully, and I'm just this wretched, outsider. And none of that is true, but with gratitude for your presence, for the other, presence of the other, with openness, softness, grace, you lessen that burden. You both are able to connect at an experiential being level, at a human being level. And the gratitude, the non-judgmental gratitude, doesn't mean that everything has to be perfect all the time and all the boxes have to be checked and no, none of that. But the openness allows for a different kind of perfection. And it's a perfection of experience, not a perfection of, everything's in exactly the right place all the time.
Well, it's an internal heart-to-heart touch. It's one human heart touching another human heart. And that acknowledgement, that simple acknowledgement of your heart, and it has been broken, and it's coming back together slowly. You're healing. But it returns dignity to the other person. You have a right to feel broken because you have gone through this experience, but you deserve more than just brokenness in your life. So, I'm just a reminder.
And an acknowledgement, a witness. This is a good time, if you wouldn't mind, that we could kind of jump off into the quote, because this is exactly what it's talking about right there, the first line. So maybe,
all right,
maybe go for it.
Okie dokie.
I'm grateful for that.
Gratitude unlocks the fullness of life. It turns what we have into enough and more. It turns denial into acceptance, chaos into order, confusion to clarity. It can turn a meal into a feast, a house into a home, a stranger into a friend. And this is a quote by
Melody Beattie.
Melody Beattie.
Well, I've never heard of before. This is a lovely expression.
Yes. But it's understanding that this is the substance of who you actually are. You are that transition point where you either step into the fullness of life or don't. Without gratitude, you're only getting a sliver of life, and it's the sliver that your mind is dictating. This is where this is what you're ungrateful for.
Right. This is what you don't have.
And this sliver is all you're going to be engaging in, instead of grateful for there is a fullness of life. There's so much more to life than what I'm not grateful for.
Well, just as we said earlier, though, this gratitude is not the judgmental what I don't have or what I need or what has to be or what isn't and why I don't have all the things that I have and why am I talking to all these. Gratitude, that being state, unlocks the fullness of life because you are within it and grateful for what Margaret said earlier, your breath, your next breath, for the moment of now. So when Tolle could have easily said this, when it unlocks the fullness of life, it unlocks the spaciousness of life, it unlocks the beingness of life, the isness of now is unlocked by gratitude, by being thankful for whatever the hell's going on, doesn't matter, just thankful for being there.
Oh, gratitude is found in the stillness.
Also stillness, yes.
Well, the stillness in between whatever the incidences may be, the interactions. But in that stillness, you can feel that fullness of life. That's the only place you can find it. You can't find it in slivers. I think that's the fallacy that people have embraced, is that these slivers or shards are the only thing that they're worthy of. So I'm going to hang on to this shard of my heart because that's all. My heart's been broken and all I got is this. Gratitude allows you to understand that it can all be healed and broken together because life is so much more than this broken incident in my life. And I have to decide that I am going to focus on the potential that's out there. When you just realize the potential that's out there for your life, oh my, it's overwhelming, the grace that's available to you.
Absolutely. But I mean, to go back to this stillness that you mentioned, I wanted to make sure that that point, you go by the point so quickly, and I'm trying to stop, because that stillness is exactly what opens the pathway. When you have a conversation, you mentioned this woman in the store who was sad, you have to give her the space and the stillness in between the gabble, gabble, yada, yada, of how you doing. In between that, the gratitude, the stillness is where that pathway, the bridge gets built between two actual beings in a moment of now. So that the unlocking is unlocking, as is good with this word, unlocking the doorway, the path, the door to the two hearts. Because if you keep that, if you stay out of the gratitude state, you stay in the egoic slivers and shards, there's no pathway to talk to anybody. There's no opening for you to actually have a conversation about now, because you're off, in all your little shards counting your bits, and I'm off counting my bits, and then we pass by each other and we throw a bit at each other and keep moving, right? And the gratitude sits you down in the stillness, right in between the breaths, as I'm grateful for the breath, opening that pathway to the other heart, and you hear, it's not this giant doo-wah nuclear blast of light coming. No, it's just the still words, the actual look in the eyes that says, I have a painful thing that if you're willing to hear it, it would help me. And then you hear it and you accept it and you say, yeah, that looks great on you.
It's just a simple acknowledgement that another interesting aspect to that is many times when someone is really hurting, they're going through their process, and the ones that are not self-focused, in other words, they're so angry that they turn on whoever is available and just lash out. Talking about the ones that understand, they've been through the initial rawness and they're processing. But there is a pain with them, and they understand that many times people do perceive that and instinctively turn away from them because they're carrying pain.
Right. There's a bit of fear there. You need some courage.
Yeah. But to stand in the presence of someone who's not afraid of your pain,
right,
is a gift that someone can give to the person that's hurting. But you really, literally can't pretend that you're not that the fear, you're not afraid of their pain. You have anxiety about the pain. It gets picked up immediately. The spaciousness where it doesn't matter what you say, I hear you, and there's no judgment. People think they can do that.
But that's the key is think.
Yes, this is what I mean. To be able to engage in someone that way, you literally have to be thankful for the engagement. And even if what you're seeing is painful and they're having a hard time controlling it, you allow the space for them to express it and let it go. It doesn't mean that you become a punching bag, mind you.
No, you display the courage to accept. This little bit of the quote, it turns denial into acceptance. You in gratitude, you accept the other, and you accept that this is going to take, that someone's burden is a burden on them, and if you willingly open up and hear about it, you take some of that energy from them. You have to accept that and acknowledge the pain, and it has a cost to it. As Margaret said, you have to be courageous, first of all, and you can't just think about it. Well, thinking about it is like sympathy. Oh, I'm so glad I'm not you. And, oh, gosh, that's terrible, and run away. No, compassion is also part of the gratitude. Gratitude has compassion for the other and grateful for their presence, and you accept in opening the door, unlocking the fullness of life, of the moment of now. Unlocking that means that you allow this in, and you say, I recognize this because all human beings go through this. All of us have burdens. All of us have troubles. All of us are going to experience pain. And when somebody says to you, not in so many words, but you see it, they just have something on their heart. You don't know what it is yet, but you see it immediately, and then you have the choice to run away or not. If you don't run away, you don't deny them, you turn it into acceptance, and you hear them, you witness them, you're grateful for them. I hear you, I witness you, I love you in one way of saying, I'm grateful for who you are, and I'm willing to hear you.
Yeah, I care about you.
Care is another good word.
People take that word very lightly. But when it's truly a being state, when you care, that comes across. You know people who really do care and those that don't.
There's an honesty.
Mm-hmm.
There's a real honesty in gratitude. In other words, you can't fake it.
No. Well, there's a lot of mouthing, as I call it.
But you see it, right? You said that in gratitude, when somebody sees immediately that you're just trying to, you're well-meaning, the pathway to hell is paved with good intentions, but everyone can see that it's phony, that it's just a good intention. It's just an egoic, yada yada.
It's interesting because you also have to make room for the fact that people do try, but they are governed by fear.
Yes.
And you can't be governed by fear in that moment. You also have to be honest about the fact that you will make mistakes.
Yeah.
And people believe that, well, I've gone through the training, I'm not going to make any mistake. It's like, no. Human relationships, human interactions are quite individual, person to person. If you take that as a baseline and understand that with every person, you are learning something, just as they're learning from you. So what is it that you want to bring to the table to share?
And you will be tested.
Always.
So this is an interesting little mechanism here. Margaret is incredibly courageous, in case you haven't really already figured that out. And she'll dive right into the depths of hell with people and just sit there with them. And I'm like, forget that. That's not me. Oh, okay, I will. I can do it if I kind of set myself up for it. But the point is that it requires something of you. It requires courage. It requires honesty. It requires the acceptance that you're not going to do it perfectly every time. That you're going to try to. You see some pain in someone, and you try to open up, and they blast you with all this nonsense and shut you down and yell at you and scream at you. Maybe because they are so in the throes of it that they don't know how to trust. It's like a starving dog who doesn't know that you're trying just to give it something to eat, and it barks and snarls and growls and tries to bite you because it's so wounded and afraid on its own that it can't even recognize that it's being welcomed. Mm-hmm. That's what some people's egos have driven them to, this very dark place. But with courage, you come at them and you can, to use the analogy of the starving dog, if you continually present the same, if you feel that they're really worth it, you can work with people who are desperately wounded and desperately broken. But this takes tremendous Mother Teresa level courage to go into those depths. Don't start there. Unless you're really into it, because you have to start a little lower than that.
It's whether or not you're moved by your spirit.
That's true.
Because if you're moved by your spirit to engage soul to soul, the strength and the grace will be there. As well, you have to surrender your ego over and allow that interaction to happen. But it's acknowledging that you don't engage in any person randomly. You're guided internally by your heart and your spirit. And it says, just be there. Sometimes all is needed is your presence.
Just to be there.
Yes. And you don't have to say a word. I like those personally. I don't have to talk.
Me too. But you know, to go back to the other analogy is that, again, if you are called by the Spirit to reach out and touch someone, you have to take the courage and do it. The strength will be there. You'll be able to walk on the water, but you have to remain in that gratitude moment. You have to stay there and channel grace for yourself, channel grace for the other. And yes, then you can do anything. You can, with that strength and grace, it's not your strength, it's not your grace, you're the vehicle, the channel for this.
Well, the gratitude automatically allows for a humility within yourself.
True.
Because you know it's not you, but you are grateful to be there for this person. It's automatic, and the courage comes in automatically because you know it's not you. It's an intervention by a larger hand to express a love that you yourself personally may not actually be able to give.
Remember when Peter started to sink is when he started to think about it.
Well, he was distracted.
Right.
He became distracted.
And afraid.
And afraid because he kept watching the waves go higher and higher. It's like the circumstances are threatening.
Right.
Instead of realizing that you've already been given the promise that you will be able to walk on the water simply because he calls you.
Right.
And you gave that permission, but then you forgot you gave that permission.
Right.
And you wanted to manage the fact, wait a minute, the waves are too big. No, maybe this is too much for me.
This is too much for me. But the gratitude, okay, so if we go back, so gratitude unlocks both the openness for the other and the grace for you and grace for both. You see, again, we're always talking about on the Soul of the Everyman human relationships. Yes, you can be grateful all by your little lonesome for your life right at that moment, and that's a wonderful thing. Do that too. But the gratitude in welcoming the other and acceptance, it does exactly what the last part of Melody's quote says. It can turn a simple meal, which is just nutrition, into a feast, and a house into a home. I mean, what's the difference between a house and home? They're both structures, but one has love within it. One has presence. One is an actual shelter for the heart, a home. And the stranger, as Margaret does all the time, she turns perfect strangers into, first they cry all over her, and then they're friends for life. And I just have to stand by and just, oh my God, this is happening again. But it's true. I mean, without any kind of being funny about it, which is what I do. These people become friends. Why? Because they've shared an intimacy in this little exchange. Because nothing will make an impression more upon a person than to find somebody who's willing to witness them, to accept them as they are, to be grateful for their presence, to hear them. All of us go through life wanting to have these types of relationships. People look all over for all the shards and all the lists and all the things and got to have this guy. No, but then a real relationship comes into your life and it takes something from you and it gives something to you and it gives you preciousness that you cannot even literally describe very well, but it changes both of you, and it shows you what life is all about. That person becomes dear and precious to you, and you to them, at a level far beyond death. Death doesn't change the love relationship. That it just is a different form, but the relationship survives everything.
The soul-to-soul interaction, a real soul-to-soul interaction, transitions your immediate situation into something that goes beyond time. Mm-hmm. A stranger into a friend means that your hearts have met, and that moment goes on forever because the hearts were open and the exchange happens. That's what the fullness of life is. Regardless of what is happening around you, you're grateful to be able to share in that moment. And it's so profound, frankly, and it's so sacred. Thank you. That this is what you are actually looking for day to day. The ability to engage in sacred moments. And when you realize that, because we've been trained to downplay every single little thing. Oh, that's just a little task, and there's big tasks, and there's little tasks. Mm-hmm. No, it's understanding that your presence brings all of it into a realm of sacredness.
And timelessness.
Yes. And this is what your heart is actually looking to do, to engage in that. To understand that this is what it means to be truly human.
We often talk about the eternity bank and, writing your experience upon the timelessness, the spirit, the soul. The channel from the body through the soul into the spirit is the channel from the temporal to the eternal. And the eternal moment, those timelessness of those moments, is because that relationship has broken from the temporal. Mm-hmm. It's gone into the vertical dimension. Totally often uses the cross as an analogy of the temporal, which is the crossbar, the horizontal bar, and the eternal, the vertical bar. And where they meet is where you are, the moment of now. You know, the temporal meets the eternal now.
Right.
You are where the temporal meets the eternal. Doesn't that sound awesome? Well, that's what you are. You're very awesome.
Yeah. Each person, it has the ability to engage in that level of awesomeness.
Through gratitude,
Yeah.
by the way. Gratitude unlocks the awesomeness of you. And, you know, it's like you should be grateful for how awesome you are. It sounds kind of funny, but it's not untrue.
Well, it's allowing yourself not to evaluate mentally, but understand that when you are in an interaction that is intimate like that, where your hearts are being shared, and it doesn't have to be these huge philosophical discussions.
No.
It is a simple touch back one to the other that, yes, I care about you, and you care as well. And you resonate that caring outward. People around you, they feel it. Just doing that incident with this woman trying on clothing, suddenly there was a whole bunch of other women that wound up coming, trying on the thing, and all debating on how it looks on each one of them.
No, this is also very important. You know, this gratitude is attractive. I mean, this part of this quote says it turns a meal into a feast. Well, what's happening? A house into a home, a meal into a feast. It's gathering. It's attraction. It takes a simple meal and turns it into an experience for all.
Yeah.
A feast is not just you and me. It's everybody.
Right. And there's an inherent joy in that.
Yes.
When it was just the two of us, that was fun. But suddenly you got 3 or 4, and you're just like, well, okay, we're all playing.
But you also said that the most important word is that gratitude is the cousin or the sister or brother of joy.
Yeah.
You know, when you're grateful, you're grateful for the moment of now, and there's a joyfulness that comes out in that. That's why in the depths of Sloan Kettering, in the midst of the cancer wards, we could laugh and sing and be joyful.
Right.
Because and people say, how can you be grateful or joyful in this terrible situation? Because the situation doesn't matter.
Right.
The moment of now is not a situation. Just is.
Right.
And in that moment, if you say, I'm grateful, thank you for the moment of now, joy ensues.
Right.
Joy ensues from gratitude. Joy is the thing that gratitude encompasses. You're grateful and you express joy. And that's the key. That unlocks everything.
To being human, enjoying the fullness of life. Yes. Yes. And we all have an opportunity to do that day to day. And we have reached the end of our hour.
And we're grateful for it.
Yes, we are. And I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael.
And I am grateful that you are here with us. Have a good Thanksgiving.